Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Sunday Matinee. This week, we're going to be looking at isolation and quarantine in horror films, specifically in The Thing and The Lighthouse. But before we get to that, just some introduction stuff and some housekeeping. So, first off, we're recording a day late. It is Monday, October 12th. We're recording a day late so I could bring in Frank Roberts to join me tonight to talk about these two ridiculously good movies. So, yeah, welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, let's see here. So if you are watching this video, you've probably already discovered us on YouTube. So like, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/truthinfilm and on Twitter at Sunday_matinee. All right, so we're going to dive into the news here real quick, some of the important stuff that happened this week. So last week I talked about how No Time to Die got pushed all the way back into April, which is a big bummer. And literally, like this last week was a huge delay for films. First off, Warner Brothers delayed Dune, which was supposed to arrive this year on December 18th, to October 1st, 2021, which is a huge bummer. That was going to be one of the potentially biggest films for the end of the year. And then literally a day later, they delayed The Batman from that October 1st spot in 2021 to March 4th, 2022. The Flash was pushed from June 3rd, 2022 to November 4th, 2022. Shazam! Fury of the Gods was delayed from November 4th, 2022 to June 2nd, 2023. And Black Adam, the spin-off film from Shazam, was removed from Warner Brothers' release schedule altogether. The only good thing to come out of this was The Matrix 4 was moved up to April 1st, 2022. Or no, it was moved up to December 22nd, 2021 from April 1st, 2022. And then, just a day later, Universal Studios delayed Jurassic World Dominion from June 11th, 2021 to June 10th, 2022. All of these movies getting a whole year delay, and they flat out shut that production down as well last week. And then the last bit of this sort of delay and theater news is that Pixar's Soul is now officially just going straight to Disney Plus, just like Mulan, very much like Onward, which did get about 2 weeks in theaters, but no word yet on if there's going to be a $30 premium charge for that one, or if they're just going to drop it for free. I'm hoping free because it's Pixar, and this one has much more appeal to the younger crowd than Mulan's going to. And it'd be a nice little Christmas present from Disney. But yeah, we'll let you know about that when they drop that little bit of info. Frank, did any of these delays bum you out in particular?
I was really looking forward to Soul. I heard like very little about it. I always love all the Pixar movies, and I mean, I'm happy to see it come to Disney Plus. I don't have Disney Plus myself. I have too many of the other things as it is, or at least so my bank account keeps telling me. But yeah, I am certainly interested in taking a look at it. I don't know. A lot of the others just honestly seem to surprise me. I hadn't heard about so many of them. I hadn't heard about Dune at all. And I heard about Jurassic World Dominion, which I'm personally fine with. I'm not a big fan of this new Jurassic World spin on things, but I was really interested to see, because they got like Sam Neill and Laura Dern for it, right? And one of the directors said something about like, you're really underestimating how much they're in the film. And I'm like, well, are they main characters? What's gonna happen? How many times are we gonna do that? But so I was like kind of morbidly curious about that one. So it's a shame that they had to push it back. But I mean, I get it. What can you really do these days? It seems as though that you either have a platform or you don't. So you just gotta wait for theaters.
Yeah, and I mean, a huge part of that problem is that right after No Time to Die was delayed, Regal here in the States, and Cineworld over in the UK basically said we don't have any more big tentpole releases to depend on, so we are probably going to be shutting down, and that now seems to be the case. So two of the biggest theater chains in two of the biggest markets in the world are are done for the foreseeable future. And I mean, that hasn't been a huge deal for us here in Washington because we're still this whole time we've basically been in shutdown with movie theaters, except for I bring this up every week. Olympia is like the only place near the sort of South Puget Sound area that has a handful of walk-in movie theaters still open.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh.
think they may be a phase ahead of because I'm in King
Uh,
and you're in Pierce, so I think they're a phase ahead of us. So they
okay.
get to have that, but still, it's only like 3 or 4 different locations that are open, um, which is rough. Like it's I think the only movies that have really gone through there are Tenet and Bill and Ted.
Mm,
Um, but thankfully, we've had some drive-ins open up. I know that they're going to be closing down here very soon because winter's coming, as they say, which is it's a shame.
yeah, I
I
was a
hope.
big fan of the drive-in resurgence personally. I really love drive-ins. I was kind of bummed that to see them go away. I mean, I went to a drive-in this last weekend, and like the windshield wipers are pretty annoying. So like I understand it, but still, it's kind of a shame to see it fade away. It was really nice to be able to go somewhere and do a thing. Honestly.
Yeah, I've had a couple of different people on here. We've had different ideas of what should be going on with drive-ins. Like drive-ins, really, if we're still sort of in this same space that we are by next summer, it wouldn't be a bad idea to drop a lot of these movies just into the drive-in just to get some kind of exposure because the fact that we've been missed out on Bond, Black Widow, we're probably going to Wonder Woman's probably going to get delayed. It's the only major tentpole movie that's still scheduled to open by year's end. Not to mention all of the indie films that aren't getting seen because, uh, yeah. Have you stopped by the Grand at all just to pick up popcorn or anything? I know they're still doing that.
We haven't yet. We've been talking about doing that, driving by the Grand when we know we have like a day. And it's like, we're going to watch movies tonight. But we've done their virtual cinema thing a few times. And that's been really cool. I was able to watch Deerskin through that, which, if you haven't checked it out, is awesome. That was a really, really good movie. And then we
I'm
also,
going to write that one down.
yeah, it was great. It's by the same guy that did Rubber. I can't remember his name, but it's that was a really excellent, strange, weird, horror-esque movie. It was really sweet. And then we watched Extraordinary, which is like an Irish horror comedy about like this ghost hunter, and that one was also really good. So yeah, I've been checking in with them every so often. Not as much lately. Should probably get back on that. But their virtual screening room is something that I've been checking out lately, and that's been really nice to watch some of their indie movies.
Yeah, I'm really glad they got that going because it's just about the only way these indie theaters are going to be able to operate for a while. I get why the big ones, the Regals, etc., can't do that.
No.
But
Yeah.
it's good that we're getting some way to access uh, these indie theaters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm supporting them any way I can. They're my favorite theater by far, and I'm glad to see them being able to sort of go ahead through this in any way they're able to.
So since this is your first time on the show, I've been asking this of just about everyone. What is the last movie you remember seeing at a sit-down theater, like a traditional movie theater?
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, it was Tokyo Godfathers. I watched a special presentation through like Fathom Events, Satoshi Kon's Tokyo Godfathers, and it was the last one I'd yet to see of his canon, and it was excellent. It's so good. I recommend that movie to anybody who's like, oh, I'm not really into anime or animation or whatever. And it's like that one's a really good introduction to his really short but really really solid canon. That's a really fun movie, and it's a Christmas movie if you're looking for a new Christmas film. Takes place on Christmas.
That's I like that it got to be a Fathom event. That was actually the same for me. Was King Kong when they did
Oh,
that in March, and it was actually, I know I've said this a billion times on the show. It was literally like not even 2 hours after I left the movie theater that Governor Inslee announced that movie theaters were going to be shutting down.
oh man.
So it was oof. It was a close call.
Yeah, mine was like I think a week before, like the week before. But yeah, that was crazy. It was absolutely insane to think of that moment. It was like the last, like one of the last normal moments, I guess, before all this stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so long ago.
Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about time very much with especially with the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Um, so the last bit of news for the week. Um, this is a Marvel thing, so this has been a weird one. So who was it? Last week it was Jamie Foxx joins the cast of Spider-Man 3 as Electro,
I
and
saw.
and so many questions about that. Um, Less of a surprise, but definitely indicative of where the movie is going now is Doctor Strange has been added to the roster of Spider-Man 3. So, it just sort of is pointing into that direction of Spider-Man 3 is probably going to be a big old multiverse film, potentially with, people are asking, is Andrew Garfield going to come back and play Peter Parker? Are we going to do that kind of thing? Um, which should be fun. I don't know.
I would trade Tobey Maguire for Andrew Garfield any day, personally.
I I've liked all three. The only reason I don't think that Tobey Maguire would come back is just because it's been 13 years since he played Peter Parker. He's probably aged out of the role considerably. If they brought him back, he would kind of have to be that same sort of the Peter Parker that they had in the animated Spider-Verse movie, who is definitely sort of gained a little weight and is sort of at, probably not doing too well.
Yeah, for sure.
Either that, or they could, just slap some special effects on his face and make him look young again.
There you go. Yeah, no, definitely.
But
yeah. It seems fun. I really enjoyed. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, my favorite Doctor Strange appearance is in like Thor Ragnarok. I'm pretty sure he just shows up real quick and he's like, "Your brother's over here. Go, get out of here." And I'm like, that's pretty fun. I hope he gets kind of one of those like really fun, just being this super powerful wizard just off in the corner, doing his own thing. It's always the most fun part of the Marvel movies that didn't really happen at first, and now they're able to do, where you just kind of have like these little one-off scenes that help to build the world that you see in the comic books all the time.
Yep.
But at first you're just like, well, I can't just hand like $5 million to Robert Downey Jr. for a joke. Like they gotta, space these things out. But now they totally can.
Yep, I'm hoping to see more of that in the future Marvel movies, and I'm really hoping to have an entire episode that's talking about this Spider-Man 3 stuff, because there's a lot of questions about this movie now. It really it just with this Jamie Foxx announcement and the Doctor Strange announcement, it really kind of shot it up into the most potentially crazy film in their immediate future. So hopefully an entire episode we can dive into that. But we have to talk about horror movies because it's still October. We're still in Halloween mode right now.
Oh yeah.
So I picked The Thing and The Lighthouse because of the situation we're in globally. I mentioned The Thing 2 weeks ago when we did our episode about favorite Halloween movies, and kind of touched on this about how it's a good pandemic movie. But these two movies back to back were absolutely perfect. So if you haven't seen The Thing, the 1982 John Carpenter film, not the 1951 film, which is still a fun little sci-fi film, but watch the Carpenter film, and also don't watch the 2011 prequel. It's terrible. Um, basically, uh, a group of scientists in the Antarctic come across a shape-shifting life form that can imitate any life form that it touches, and it's just incredibly grotesque and delightful, and filled with all kinds of amazing practical visual effects. Um, and I think it's the first collaboration between Kurt Russell and John Carpenter. They're just a dream team, because right after that would be Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China, also films that if you have not seen, get to watching those, everybody. So, Frank, what is it about The Thing? Why do we love The Thing so much?
Golly, I honestly, that's hard. There are a lot of aspects of The Thing that I really enjoy. I'd say that like the biggest reason I love The Thing is that it's a really good suspense film done well. Is that there's like a lot of interpersonal conflict and mistrust, and like the characters have really strong relationships that shift and change throughout the movie. But the scenes in between, in a lot of other films, you'll kind of watch stuff where like there'll be something like really surprising or shocking really early on, and you go like, whoa, that was crazy. And then later on it kind of creeps back up again, and you go, all right. But The Thing is one of those movies that just like keeps delivering and like keeps amping it up from like the first scene with the dogs to like every other subsequent scene when they find the thing, and it's like revealed. It reveals itself, or is revealed to them. It just keeps going. That's one of the fun things about the movie, is that it's just honestly structured so well and told so well. That's why I really love it.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, because it is one monster, but it in a way is several different monsters that come out of it, because exactly, it can imitate anyone, so you never know who it is, and they always find a creative way to make it appear. I like it because exactly, again, for what you talked about, the interpersonal relationships. You can tell through the entire movie who is closest to who, based on who shares rooms together. I love the scene where Fuchs pulls McCready away, and it's like you can tell these two get along really well.
Yeah.
And they're all very different characters, but well defined. And I also just I love the claustrophobic feeling of this entire film, with narrow corridors and the fact that they are. It's almost like a play. It's almost just one set, but it's just that basically that single location, except for the few scenes where they go fly off to the Norwegian camp.
Yeah.
And the dig site.
Which I like, honestly, I rewatched it just last night, and I'm like, I completely forgot about the dig site. I forgot that they like go out to this like alien crash matte painting in the middle of nowhere, and just like, geez, look at this shit. There's so many like aspects of the movie. It's like, I forgot this even happened. It's so crazy. Yeah, no, I just love the way the whole story develops. It's so good, and it feels so real. I love how lived in their little station is. There's like a lot of fun little details to everything, and I also love that the characters feel very like working class as well. I know that they're like still scientists and stuff, but they're very much just. I mean, it's the same thing with like Alien as well, where you've got just sort of like these regular Joes just kind of hanging out and going through an insane situation, and it makes it feel so real. I love the way that they react to everything, to the absurdity. It makes it feel very, very at home. It's easy to put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah,
which I think makes for a really excellent horror movie.
I love the comparison to Alien there, because one of the things that I think makes this film interesting is that there are no women in this film, and I think that is a very deliberate choice.
Hmm.
by the writer and by John Carpenter. Because honestly, if Ripley were there, I think things would have gone a little bit better. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
they're all scientists, but I'm going to jump a little bit ahead into just talking about the quarantine stuff. They're not very smart for scientists when it comes to quarantining weird, unknown life forms. I mean, first off, the fact that they don't seem to think maybe we should quarantine the dog. At the beginning, it's like they just treat it like a dog. And it's like, well, why would you do that? I would
Yeah,
not put that dog in with the other dogs.
yeah. I mean, every horror movie has like a series of terrible decisions, and even though they aren't a bunch of like dumb teenagers going to a notoriously haunted house or like some haunted camp, they're still doing stupid things just absentmindedly all the time, and it leads wonderfully to their demise.
Yep.
But yeah, I also love how long they don't even like lock the dog up. It's just like
Yeah.
wandering around, and you like watch people get like bit by it and shit, and everybody's just like, "Go lock it up, get it out of here."
That dog though, that dog like steals every scene it's in because
Oh,
whoever trained that dog
I know.
was perfect. Those shots of and just the editing in the beginning where it's like it turns around and you see the helicopter and then it runs off and it's like that dog knows something.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. No, it's delightful, and then, like all the quiet scenes of the dog just like watching them. Ah, so good. I love it so much. You really get the sense of like an intelligence beyond what you'd expect of a dog. You really, even though it hasn't been quote unquote revealed at that point, you're definitely like, there is something up with this pup, and it's just delightful.
Then, of course, the scene where the dog walks down the hallway and into one of the rooms, and you just see the shadow of someone, and you see the shadow turn. And I love it because I always ask, okay, who is it? And I try to think like, does that look like so and so? And it's like, I don't know though. Trying to go
Yeah,
back and try and figure out when people are infected in the film is so tough.
yeah, no, it's just honestly a delight to trace it and just go back and like, okay, this is going on, or this could happen, or this could be happening. I was watching it with my girlfriend Jill, who hadn't seen it at all before, and the whole time she was just trying to like figure out. And we went through like all the different scenarios. It's like, oh well, Blair could be infected by it, or it could be this, or it could be that, or this could be happening, and it was just like the scenarios keep stacking up, and each equally plausible. And you just go, man, I don't know. Anything could be going on, and I think that's the
Yep.
real terror of it, is that you're just like frozen into indecision by like the sheer amount of possibilities with a monster that can transform into anything, anybody.
It's we talk about this, and basically what you and I are doing right now is contact tracing.
Yeah,
We are trying to use contact tracing to figure out how this movie works, and man, that is again one of the reasons that I think this movie works right now is that's one of the things we have to deal with is trying to figure out how to stop this thing from spreading. I'm going to skip the blood test for a second and jump to Blair's computer simulation. Is
mm,
while it is definitely uh, quaint by today's standards,
yeah,
and probably oversimplistic. Um, it's still absolutely horrifying. This film also, of course, came out in 1982, right around when the AIDS epidemic was sort of becoming a big thing. So
yeah,
I can't. I mean, back then it probably had a very similar vibe to it. Um, but I and again, it's so primitive, but I love where it pops up and it says, probability that someone's been infected 75%, and how long it would take to infect the entire population of the Earth should it reach civilization. And it's 27. I think it's 27,000 hours, and it's like that sound. When you break it down, it's like that sounds like a long time, but really, it's only maybe 3 years.
Yeah, no, it's fun. So I don't know what computer program he's running it. I don't know if they're like trying to test like viruses in sub-zero conditions or something like that. I was kind of like, I just kind of pushed this out of my brain when reading it. The first time I saw it, I was just like, "Ooh, that's crazy." But the second time, I was like, "Oh, I don't know what little computer game he's playing there," but whatever.
So yeah, just kind of makes you wonder. Kind of makes you wonder what our little coronavirus would be like if we literally did let it go unchecked.
Oh, I mean, there were those days at the beginning where people were like, "Oh, it has a 15% mortality rate. Oh, it has a 13% mortality rate," and it just like was steadily like decreasing as we were figuring out ways to treat it and stuff like that. You can't imagine what the untrue mortality rate of this thing would be. I mean, 1% is us with hospitals and ventilators and are doing the best we can, but who knows if we lived in a different era of medicine?
Yeah,
What like crazy?
yeah. Just imagine if this was what the Middle Ages with the plague.
Yeah, no, I've been super into the plague actually lately. I've been reading a lot about it, and it's so stupidly similar that it's just I don't know if it's like depressing or hilarious. I can't decide. But it's like human
It's
behavior is exactly the same. Like I swear to you, exactly the same from the Middle Ages to now. It's crazy.
it's depressing, but it's also hilarious. But it's hilarious because if we don't laugh sometimes, then we will go crazy.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Uh, so we're going to talk a little bit here for now about what do you do against something like the thing? What do you do against something like COVID-19? I love when Fuchs comes up with this little plan of hey, we need to eat separately and
Mm.
we need to eat out of cans. We need to probably split everyone as apart as we possibly can, which of course again doesn't work because uh, it sucks because these things technically would work if if they could just figure out who was infected.
Yeah, definitely. If they're able to hold their later test earlier, then they could probably figure stuff out. But because McCready's just this helicopter pilot and he's not actually a scientist himself, he's not able to come up with it until more people are infected and more people are injured.
I love that moment where everyone is asking McCready all the questions early on in the film, and he's like, "What are you asking me for? Talk to Blair."
Yeah, yeah. He's like, I just grabbed this weird two men mash here. I don't know what's going on.
And that's actually that going back. That's their second mistake. They should have just left that body.
I know. Yeah, but I can't remember who it is. He says like, what are you gonna do with like that? You can't just burn the discovery of a century or something
Yeah,
like that. I'm just like, God, typical.
I mean, if they'd left that body, they'd have killed the dog, and maybe only one other person is infected at that point.
Yeah, maybe there's like something that like leaps off of the dog and like jumps up into the ceiling though, and so you don't know like which part of what is happening when, and it's all very I don't know. It's very curious.
It is. It is a very curious film. Uh, so when they finally do figure out something to do, the blood test. Gosh, that might be the best scene in the film. Um,
Yeah, it's certainly my. I don't know about best. It's certainly my favorite. It's so good. I love every moment of it.
it's so dramatic because you're just waiting for it to finally happen, and
And then it does. That's the thing. That's what's awesome about the movie is the whole time you're just in suspense, and then when it comes, it's like worse than you imagined. it's like so much more horrifying because they're always inventive with what occurs and what happens. And it's just so cool.
And then, of course, really the only part of that plan that really fails is the fact that that it really was only Palmer. Like, man, if they had, you know, planned it out better, like they had so many uninfected people tied up to the couch.
I know. Ugh. Ugh. Yeah, I love the
They were
part where like looking at the rope and looking over at Palmer and just screaming, trying their best to get like out of their restraints because they're just like struggling because they're screwed. They can't do anything. You know, if it wanted to kill all three of them, it could have, but it spent all its time on Windows.
Yep. Yep.
Ugh.
And that poor busted flamethrower that McCready was trying to
No,
like,
he's working at it for forever. I'm like, there's got to be something else in the room you can use. But he's just like, well, just keep hitting it because there's nothing else to do. Oh man, no, that's great.
yeah. Yeah, the blood test. Thankfully, thankfully right now we're dealing with less invasive tests, even though they do suck. I've had to do it twice.
Oh, you have?
Well, I get them, and I know I'm super duper lucky when I say this. I get to do them free at work
Oh.
because, of course, I work at Amazon, and thank goodness I can actually say it. Hey, they're spending money on something that's actually important. Haha.
Oh, that's good.
But I did it. I've done it twice because we've had two people test positive at work in the past couple of months. So it's like, okay, I better go get tested. And thankfully I've been negative
Yeah.
every time. So,
Jeez.
but I will say, yeah, it's not painful, but it is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I bet it's a little bit better than getting your thumb sliced open by a dirty
Yeah.
scalpel.
But yeah, it's pretty much the same deal as you find it and you're supposed to quarantine it. Thankfully,
Yeah.
thankfully when someone tests positive for COVID, they don't burst open and have a billion tentacles fly out with teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think it'd be worse if that happens.
Yeah, thankfully we're not to that point yet with our with our killer viruses.
Yeah, it's yet to evolve. I think we can get there.
Um, so I'm going to talk again about the claustrophobia of this film. Again, narrow corridors, lots of narrow corridors, and just being trapped inside that one building with all those people is definitely going to give you a little bit of cabin fever. And like you said, you can already see it settling in before um, things really get out of hand because you can tell who gets along with who and who doesn't get along. Um, Clearly, everyone just is always giving Windows crap because he's stuck there on the radio all day and can't do anything, and no one likes Palmer.
Yeah.
That's a great little exchange in the beginning where Palmer offers to take them up in the chopper, and no one wants Palmer to be going out there.
Yeah. Early exchanges also talking about like mistrusting cabin fever. They're talking about the Norwegian scientists, and they're just like, maybe they just went crazy. Who knows?
Yeah,
5 minutes out here will drive you crazy. And it's like just the conditions. It doesn't even involve the thing at all. It's just being there that drives people absolutely insane. Not being able to go inside for months at a time. And I think we all have gotten a sweet little taste of that ourselves lately.
yeah. I'm glad that we can, at the very least, go outside our homes and, in some cases, do a little bit of traveling as long as we're conscious of who we're around.
Yeah.
Which is nice. I think the winter is probably going to change things around a little bit because obviously camping's going to be out of the question.
Yeah.
A lot less outdoors activities.
Yeah, a lot of campsites are closing down too.
I remember last February 2019 when we had the massive snowstorm, and we were all kind of shut in for a weekend. And again, thankfully, we are in an era where we have video games, or we have movies, where we have the internet, we have stuff inside our homes to keep us occupied. Man, those poor guys are stuck watching reruns of game shows on an old
Yeah.
VCR.
Yeah.
That
No.
is, and playing pool and foosball and whatnot and cards with the same people over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as like they've got a pretty nice situation as far as like their rec room goes, but I could definitely see like months at a time. It's just so rough.
And they'd never, I don't think they'd mention at all how long they've been there in the first place.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just kind of seems like, I mean, they all seem like very well adjusted to it overall. Like they all seem kind of in their element, despite the fact that their element is pretty trying and exhausting. But still, yeah, no, you don't really ever get a sense of that.
I know it's at least 2 weeks because they talk about how Windows has been trying to get in
Mm.
contact with someone for 2 weeks,
Oh yeah, that's
but
right.
it has to have been longer than 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no like, I don't know, new guy that just flew in, as far as you know, or anything like that. They all seem like pretty integrated as far as the crew goes. And I don't think like, I don't know, I think it works fine. I don't think you really
Yeah.
need details like that. I like the idea that they all know each other really well, and that they're all, like you said, some of them are even sick of one another, just at the get go.
Then of course things start happening, and I think one of the best moments in the film as well is when they take Blair up to the tool shed, and the last thing Blair says is "Watch Clark."
Yeah.
Still not even sure at that point if Blair's infected, if he's infected or not. It's still a pretty horrifying moment to like. He's already picked, Blair's already picked his victim.
Yeah. No, yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it's that's the thing, is it's like such a logical thing for the thing to say, or for Blair to say, because Clark's been with the dogs this whole time. He admitted to being alone with the dog for like an hour previously, and so everybody's like, it could easily be him. And Blair, and his, I guess, even pre-infected madness, killing all the dogs, clearly thought that that was the biggest vector for it transmitting to people, was all the dogs. When chopped them all up. Ugh.
And then it isn't even Clark at all.
Yeah, no, that's the crazy thing. I completely forgot about that. When I rewatched it, I was like, oh, Clark was totally normal. I mean, he grabbed the scalpel and he was going to stab McCready, but besides that, he was totally normal and completely fine. At least not infected by an alien.
Oh, and you talked about that scene where Blair is really losing it and he's smashing up all of the equipment, and whew, that is I don't want to say, the furthest, most extreme quarantine measure we've taken, because I don't think anyone's gone quite that crazy yet, but got to wonder how long it's going to be. And again, we're lucky. We can go outside. We can drive our cars. We can go places. But yeah, what is the most extreme a person will go to keep this virus from spreading? And I don't think we're going to have to worry about that.
No, thankfully, it as much as it feels real and is relevant to our situation, it is still a film of an extraordinary situation happening to very ordinary people. My favorite part of that scene also is the fact that Windows is just in the corner. He's still in the room with Blair the whole time. Blair didn't kill him or anything. He probably just, I mean, he's like, Windows is bleeding. He probably just got him out of the way and just started bashing up the radios. Figured he didn't have to worry about windows at all.
I want to bring this up because I think it's one of the weirdest little goofs in the movie too. In that scene is after they finally do restrain Blair. Like if you watch on the right hand side of the screen, like Fuchs just sort of falls over backward. And it's like, what happened there?
I completely missed that.
Yeah, it just looks like it should be in the blooper reel.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I mean that. I feel like that happens all the time. We're just like, well, this dumb thing is happening in the background, but it's
Yep.
literally the only shot that they said the line. So that's what we used.
Yep. Oh, and speaking of Blair, the last thing I kind of want to talk about here with the whole isolation thing is I love the scene where they go up to the tool shed and they open it up and there's a noose.
Yeah, that's just so horrifying. And he's so like demure. He's just like, can I come inside now, please? I don't want to be out here. And it's just he's speaking so plainly, and it's
Yeah,
yeah,
I can't imagine. I can't imagine what it would be like um, for someone who is quarantined here now to feel it's like there's got to be that sort of sense of that stigma of feeling like an outcast while you're stuck by yourself and it's like I can't see anybody. Um, at least if you're positive but you're asymptomatic and you have to lock yourself away, it's like I feel normal. Like
yeah,
what's the problem? I don't feel sick.
yeah. If I was sick, I'm all better now. He says,
Yeah.
"Oh man,
Um, but and again, for that first person who tested positive at work, they were gone for 2 weeks, and then they came back, and it's like, and they never mentioned names, but I work at a fairly small warehouse. We can kind of deduce what's been going on. So when that person did come back, it was kind of like, okay, they're back. Do I keep my distance for a little bit?
yeah,
And thankfully, that person has not seemed sick at all, and it's been a month since they got back. So it's like, okay, we're good here. But it is like, yeah, what do you do when you meet someone who's coming out of quarantine, or you know, or you happen to know someone who's being irresponsible with their coming out of quarantine, like someone who might be in charge of an entire country. I don't know.
oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
What country would that be? I certainly don't live there. Yeah,
No, we live in Southern Europe.
if only. Oh my god.
You can tell by our accents.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Worst it's ever gotten for me is like a friend of a friend has it, or an acquaintance of an acquaintance has it, and it's like, oh god. But thankfully, it hasn't been too present in my life. But the thing is that like a lot of people have know nobody with it, and then all of a sudden, like 10 of their friends, just like it just spreads, and everybody that you know suddenly has it. Terrifying, scary times. Stay inside.
Stay inside or stay away from people. Wear your masks.
Watch more horror movies.
Watch all the horror movies. Um, a few weeks ago, I actually thought that by the end of the year, if there were no like big events coming out of movie theaters, like if there wasn't a super spreader event that started in a movie theater, I thought maybe by December I will go see Wonder Woman or something in the movie theater. And then literally a week later, it's just like, oh, and cases are on the rise, not necessarily from movie theaters, but just in general. And it's like, you know, I've been to enough movies where, uh, patrons just do not follow the regular rules.
Yeah.
Um, and or if I went to see if Soul was in a movie theater, it's like go see Soul, and there are 5 kids there, and it's like, oh man, they're a massive X factor.
Yeah. Back when it wasn't around here too much, we went to see Frozen of all things, the like Broadway tour of Frozen, and there were like 5 kids behind us, like coughing, like open mouth, loud, little kid coughing, like right behind us, and I was like, I swear to God, if I get corona from these kids, oh my God. Yeah, if you're counting on people to do the decent thing, you are going to be sorely disappointed.
Yep, that is I trust most of my friends, mostly because I know that if I am going to try to do any sort of socializing with them, we are going to talk about it and do it as safely as possible. I actually tried to have a couple friends over to hang out in my backyard, and we just end up getting delayed by other things. And
Yeah.
now we're heading into the rainy season in the winter, and it's like, oh, well, I guess we're not going to hang out.
Yeah. No. No. Yeah. No. It's
Nope.
the gone soon are the days of in person anything because you can't safely hang out inside. So what are you gonna
Yep.
do?
I guess we're all just going to have to convert all of our houses to have those exact same ventilation systems that they're putting in movie theaters. That'll surely do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
Everybody's
no.
got extra cash lying around right now for
Yeah.
expensive home projects, right?
And again, there's still no X factors with this thing, right?
Yeah. I think it's pretty safe.
Oh man, we've talked about the thing a lot, but let's
Yeah.
move on to the lighthouse. So less of a quarantine vibe with the lighthouse, but definitely that sense of isolation. So
Yeah.
for the hundreds of thousands of you who have not seen this movie, because I know like no one has seen this movie and it frustrates me a lot.
Really?
Um, of all of my friends who are pretty big movie buffs, um, you and my friend Zach, who was going to be here tonight, are like
Hmm.
the only two who have seen it.
That's crazy. I felt like everybody was like, "Oh my God, the lighthouse! We got to watch the lighthouse," and then most people I know went and saw it immediately. That's crazy to hear.
Yeah. I
I
have a
felt like
handful of other
very
friends who
popular
have.
film.
Just a handful of other friends who have, but yeah, most of my friends have not seen it, and it's so for all of you who haven't seen it, it's I'm going to actually describe it the way that last night I had a little fun with one of those Facebook posts about describe a movie in as boring a way as possible. So I decided, well, I'm going to watch The Lighthouse tonight, so I'm going to do that one. So I described it as two men, um, two men have their living situation extended due to bad weather, something along those lines. Oh, and that they hate each other. Um, and the person guessed, this, I have no idea. And this isn't a horror movie person, so totally made sense that they didn't get this. But they said the closest I can get is The Odd Couple. So now, um, if I need to describe The Lighthouse to people, I would just describe it as The Odd Couple of horror movies.
And that's yeah.
So in this case, though, not. I mean, there's some funny parts to this movie. There are some very funny parts, but um, just two guys who are stuck watching a lighthouse for goodness knows how long.
Yeah,
There's
or even by the end of it, if it really goes
yeah,
off the rails, it really messes with your head. This one delves much more into, I feel like, the insanity part of
mhm.
quarantine, where you're just like, I don't know how long I've been here or where here even is or what's going on. It's very fun. I watched this pretty early into quarantine, and I was like, "Whew, this is a bad choice. This is this is hitting me in a way I didn't realize."
I think it's crazy that this movie dropped about a year ago in movie theaters, and like literally just months before we're in quarantine. Here's a movie about two people who are stuck together.
Yeah,
Like it really predicted what we were about to get into. Um, So yeah, I'll just start with the same question. Why do we love the Lighthouse?
Oof. Um, um, golly. It's hard because it's like I love things that have like a really clear homage, I guess, factor to them, and the Lighthouse has like a very specific, fun aesthetic to it, where it really harkens back to like old early photography and everything. The way things are framed, especially early on, where everything's very symmetrical. You got these really strong close-ups. Um, but I mean, from there, I feel like it would be very easy to make a very sort of simple, because there are elements of that throughout, like the old, like harkening back to this old style of filmmaking. It'd be very easy to make like a modern, I guess, silent horror film just with sound. But the film really evolves and develops and like breaks free of that. Um, I guess that's framework that it begins to kind of set up for itself early on. And I don't know, it evolves. It twists and turns, and it develops. And I think that's what's really enjoyable about it.
I love this movie, but I will say it is very hard to follow,
Oh yeah.
because it is basically about a person going insane. It really delves into that. But I love that it's in black and white. I love that we haven't brought this up yet. It was filmed in an aspect ratio of 1.19 to 1, which is about as close to a perfect square as you can get um, in movies. Um, Anyone who's watching this episode and does not understand what that means that basically it was filmed the way that, like what Frank said, it was filmed the way that movies were filmed back in the early days, when movie screens were shaped like a box. That's why televisions were shaped like a box, to accommodate the shape of the films and television that was being made at the time. Widescreen televisions, oof, that is still a very new thing for most people at home. So if you're watching The Lighthouse on a widescreen TV, you're going to have those two black bars on the side.
Yeah, and
So,
I did the whole time. It's very fun.
yeah. So for years and years, we complained about the black bars at the top and bottom of our screen. But there's no reason to complain about those black bars on the sides of your screen, because that's how they're made. And I love the way they do that, because it does actually make the film feel, again, more claustrophobic. It's much more confined. You have to really focus into that one spot on the screen. And that close up of them at the beginning of the movie of Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, um, one of the most memorable shots in the film, because you can
Yeah, really
immediately
excellent.
see.
Yeah, it feels like documentary footage at the beginning. It feels really it's really cool. I like the way that the story kind of takes almost like this old photograph that you've maybe seen a million times, and then it just sort of takes you out of that and moves you into a story. I really love that transition. It's really good.
Yeah, in that first shot, I love that. I want to actually use the character names here. We're going to go into a bit of a spoiler territory here for all of you who haven't seen it. So, Robert Pattinson's character is called Winslow, but he also has another name, which you find out later. So, we're going to call him Winslow for now. So, Winslow and Wake are the two characters. Um, Winslow just looks absolutely nonplussed to be there, whereas Willem Dafoe's character Wake is looking a little overeager.
Yeah.
He clearly they are. I think they're actually assuming that Thomas Wake is a real person. I think that he is insane for the exact opposite reasons that Winslow is insane. I feel like what drives Winslow crazy is the lack of society,
Mm.
and being stuck here alone with only one other person. Whereas I think what could have drawn Wake crazy was being with people, because he clearly prefers the comfort of being alone at the lighthouse. He abandoned his family to do it. He based to be at sea. So being alone and with the sea, I think, is sanity for him.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely calms him. It's the closest thing he can do. He talks about how he injured his leg, and he gives different reasons as to how he injured his leg, but it seems as though being a wiki is the closest he can come to his old days on a ship. And it definitely is like a source of, like, I don't know, peace, but it certainly centers him. It's where he's meant to be.
And now there are other characters in this film apart from Winslow and Wake, but two of them are definitively only part of Winslow's psyche.
Yeah,
And then the other two are the other lighthouse keepers who are they're relieving, and it's very interesting that you never get to see a close up of their faces.
yeah, no,
They're gone. They're gone almost immediately.
yeah, they're just
So,
there for like context for how lighthouse keeping works. Really, they're almost like just set dressing these two people that just move through the scene, and you go, oh, they're relieving their duty. Oh, they'll be here for this long. But it's really almost for the entire thing, just Pattinson and Defoe.
yep.
Movie.
And I think it's very important that those two are only set dressing, because if you do add other human elements to this film, that's that's a little less of that isolation.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's that sense that there is a world outside of the lighthouse, um, and we can't have that world outside of the lighthouse.
Yeah, the other fun thing about it is it's not only just these two men on this island, but they also perform different duties. And so most of the time they're alone as well. And they seem to additionally have semi opposite sleep schedules on top of all that. So most of the film is just Pattinson completely by himself doing these back-breaking tasks alone, like even without Wake at all.
And it's definitely, I think it's fun to note that a lot of the times when he was doing these tasks in bad weather, that wasn't that wasn't a special effect or anything. That was actual bad weather.
Yeah, I read that they're just on an island and it's like that. It was just
Yep.
raining that hard on everybody. And it's
Um,
just so miserable.
the only from what I've read, the only like actual sort of visual effects that they had to edit in later, I'm gonna obviously assume the mermaid is one. When she's swimming underwater.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But any close-ups of the seagulls were also
Oh yeah.
they had to digitally insert those as well, because it's seagulls are not as easy to train as a dog.
No, no, not at all. Yeah.
In fact,
Didn't they also take away the eye of one of the seagulls too in
yeah,
post as well?
that was
Yeah.
also post. I also read too that the real seagulls were a constant burden for the cast and crew, because they would actually fly down and peck at them.
Oh man,
So,
that's terrible.
but just about every seagull you see in that film that's flying around is a real seagull. So,
Fun.
so yeah, that film gets very real. And yeah, they do a lot of stuff by themselves.
Yeah. So much of it is just him like shoveling coal angrily alone. And like they only have really meal times together, and that's pretty much it.
So yeah, I mentioned time earlier. There is no way to follow time in this film.
No.
The big turning point to me is when uh, when Winslow wakes up the next morning after they've been drinking all night, and he and the audience would assume that it's the next morning, And then Wake tells him, I think it's after he tries to escape on the boat, that they've been there for weeks. It's been weeks since they were supposed to have been relieved.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think he says it twice. There's one earlier when like he says the damp has got to the rations and like
yep, I think that might be it. Yep,
all their food is gone. And that's like the first time that he's just like, yeah, we got to start rationing. I've been telling you for two
that's
weeks.
it.
And you're just like, what? 2 weeks? What are you talking about? And you're like with Winslow there as you're just like, I'm, and he reacts the same way that you do. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And Wake is insistent. It's like, that's what I've been telling you constantly. You never listen to
Yep.
me. My God, what is going on? And then
And
yeah, he
that's
doubles down on it later, where it's just like, how long we been here? Weeks, 2 days, who knows?
yep. And that is where we catch up to real life, because we are now in October, and it at once feels like, wow, we're already in October. Wow, how'd we get here? At the same time, as has been posted several times on social media, countless times, uh, this pandemic started 10 years ago.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, it feels like a whole lifetime away. And it's the more time chugs on, the more and more I'm just like, I don't know what's the point of a calendar these days. It feels so strange when you're not able to really hold normal events anymore, as you just keep being like, oh well, maybe I'll get to have a normalish Christmas, and that kind of falls away. And I'm like, oh well, maybe this, maybe that, and it all kind of goes away. It's yeah, it's all just sort of dissolving, and time stops really mattering.
Well, yeah, it does. I still have to hold on to the days of the week so I know when to go to work, but that's about it.
I mean, thankfully, me too.
Yep.
For right now, that's about the only thing that really centers me. There, during the times where there wasn't work, it was definitely like, yeah, it doesn't genuinely matter what day of the week it is
Yep.
at all. Could be Tuesday, could be Sunday. Who cares?
Oh, I forgot to write this down, and I think it's very important. I also just I love that they get to that point where they're in crisis mode. You know, we have to ration, and everything's falling apart. But you know what? You still have to do your duties.
Yeah,
All these stupid little things, you know,
yeah,
whether they're important or not. And I feel like that's kind of that was kind of what it was like for those first 2 months, when it's like we're in quarantine and you can't work, but you have to work.
yeah,
It's like, and I was in that boat where it's like, am I going to be one of those people who has to work? And just like, yep, you still have to go to work. And I'm sitting here like, cool. So am I going to go back to work, and am I going to be, you know, shipping off all of these essential items? And, you know, we're going to be doing food, you know, at our warehouse now, and toilet paper. And of course we did have the toilet paper scare, but for the most part, it's still just been ridiculous junk that, you know, we get orders for and ship off to people. It's like, this doesn't feel it. This doesn't feel as essential as it should.
yeah. Isn't that fun? It's not so much about keeping just the framework of society together, so that way we can just knuckle down and weather the storm. But it's just about kind of keeping, I don't know, all the dumb stuff too, all the superfluous things in motion as well.
But at the same time, I'm happy that like someone is still there at Microsoft keeping the servers up so I can play on my Xbox.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
true.
um, I think it's really awesome that a lot of jobs now, a lot of employers are realizing, holy crap, we could have been having people work from home this whole time, and this is working out very well.
Yeah, and
So,
some people it works very very well for. I personally cannot stress the importance for me to like go to a place and then do stuff and then leave that place and have home be home and work be work. But I mean, I knew that long before the pandemic came around. But I'm glad that people are thinking a little bit more creatively in the age of the internet as how to run things now. It kind of forced us to look at ourselves in many ways.
Yeah. I'm not sure where I stand. I don't know if I would ever want to have a job where I just stayed at home all day. I never have had one where I had that option, so we'll see.
It
Like
requires more self-discipline than I possess.
I would imagine so because I could easily be distracted by, whatever is right to my left, which happens to be my television.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, um, when I do back in my high school and college days when I did homework, it always helped to have TV on in the background just to have that. But it can be a distraction. And it can even be worse if it's work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but yeah, there are definitely some jobs out there, and it was like running a movie theater when some movie theaters refused to shut down. It was like this is dumb. Why are you forcing people to come in and do this job that is a little bit dangerous? Or I don't know if you heard about this, but early on, GameStop refused to close a lot of its stores or do curbside service. They were like, we're essential because they sold important computer parts. And it's like, we know what you sell, GameStop, and it's not
Yeah.
something that people go to your stores for.
Yeah, I do remember
No.
that. Where they were really like, no. This is everybody needs a GameStop. I'm like, I have not gone into a GameStop in so long. GameStop is not essential for anybody.
Um, yeah, and I've been able to get I've been able to do all my best by shopping online and have it delivered. So
Oh,
I miss going into a Best Buy. I know I can with a mask now, but I'm not going to.
yeah. No, I had my computer break in the middle of quarantine, and I had to figure that out. That was fun.
Oh,
Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't need any parts though, but that would have been fun to
yeah.
manage.
I need to go get my car looked at just for general maintenance, like an oil change and whatnot. And it's like I'm not looking forward to that.
No, the fun thing is when you walk into a place and you're like, "Oh, cool, no one's wearing masks. Fun." And
Yeah.
sometimes that happens at like garages or places, and you go, "All right, I'm not comfortable with this, but I also cannot fix my own car."
Yep. Yeah. Thankfully, I've been able to take care of like just about everything I need, either have it delivered or do curbside in terms of groceries. So
Oh, that's good.
that's been great. Um, so back to the movie. We went on a nice little tangent from this movie.
Yeah.
Um, because of that whole time is irrelevant now. Yep. um, we've on this show we've talked about unreliable narrators.
Mm,
Specifically with Christopher Nolan films, like his early films, like Memento, has a very
mm,
unreliable narrator. Um,
yeah.
this film has two unreliable narrators, possibly one, depending on if you believe that uh, Wake is real. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think he is. It makes sense that he is to have two
I,
people at the lighthouse, but there may be
yeah.
a point where he stops being real.
Yeah. There's no, I don't know, tangible way to really say, no, he isn't real. But I do, for me, the most interesting part of the film is when he's just like, is this even real? Are you just like freezing in the snow somewhere and this is all just something you've concocted in your mind? What's even going on? I really just was like, God, that's a fun idea. I love the way that the film kind of like devolves into this whole like you because at that point you don't know what time is, you don't know what's going on, you don't know who to believe, and your own eyes seem to be contradicting what Wake is saying, and he says it with such, and he's like the boss. He's saying, "No, this is what's going on. This is what's happening."
I feel like if this film had been directed by someone who's um, a little bit more connected to Hollywood, not necessarily an independent director,
Mm.
that this movie might have ended with a shot of Winslow buried in the snow.
Yeah, Yeah, I like instead that it ends with almost a companion shot to that, like the shot that you would have before it cuts to the snow of him
Yeah.
at the end of the seagulls. You feel like you could easily cut from that to him in the snow with like, I don't know, a wolf tearing him apart or something. Who knows?
What I do love about the unreliable narrator aspect is I was just checking out IMDb trivia for this film last night because trivia for films like this is fascinating. And apparently, Robert Eggers, the director, um, wanted to make the audience go mad along with Winslow. And so the script is deliberately confusing, which is great because, again, like I said, I don't fully understand this movie, but I love it. Um, and also, uh, Robert Eggers did not give Willem Dafoe or Robert Pattinson um, any sort of idea of what it is they see when they look into the light. He
Mm,
just told them,
yeah.
this is how you respond.
Mm-hmm.
So it is completely up to what you believe. So,
Yeah, honestly, I personally enjoy that. I know like some people really want concrete things when they go and see a film, but if you're not looking for that and everything we've already said hasn't really spoiled it for you, then you should watch The Lighthouse because it's very fun.
mhm.
It plays with your mind in a really interesting way. I like the way that the narrative flows well with the disorientation of Winslow, and you feel really connected to him because you see everything not necessarily through his lens, but you watch it all with him.
Yep.
And so when Wake says something, you're as reeled as taken aback as he is.
Oh yeah, like the epic monologue.
Oh yeah,
That was reportedly all done in one take,
is
which,
that the I cast ye into Neptune's
yep,
depths monologue? God, that's so good.
yep, that is a. I don't like using film monologues for theater auditions, but that is one I have looked at as like, man, I would be tempted to pull that one out.
It's a pretty fun monologue. I also
Um,
love the very like domestic situation that it arises from. It's all just because Robert Pattinson says he doesn't like William Dafoe's cooking.
yeah. That actually leads right into this next little segment here. It's the little things that drive us crazy when we are stuck in a room with someone
Yeah,
for far too long. I specifically mentioned the farting,
yeah,
which is again, it's one of the funnier parts of the film, but it also is like when you're living with someone, um, you have to be able to you have to be able to love them for everything they are. Otherwise, you are going to want to get the hell out of there.
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, thankfully, I'm stuck with somebody that I love, and so everything's fine, and I don't really have these problems. But I mean, it makes for a much more interesting film for him to be stuck with somebody that he absolutely cannot stand, and someone whose little
Yes.
idiosyncrasy idiosyncrasies really like tip him over the edge and drive him absolutely insane. And it's those parts of the film that feel very real all of a sudden in the very like fantastical mind bendy part. There for every part that's sort of like what's going on, there's another part that's like very relatable.
Yep.
You can really put yourself in.
Oh, like you scrubbed the floor badly.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, that would drive me nuts. It's like
Yeah.
I scrubbed the floor. No. Yes.
I say ye didn't.
So yeah, and yeah, thankfully, like you said, for the most part, we've already been living with people that we love.
Yeah.
Um, we haven't been forced into quarantine with like complete strangers.
Yeah.
That would be a rough situation. I imagine that's there's got to be some kind of parallel with with healthcare workers having to treat some of these people very long term. Just these two strangers now who are stuck together because of this terrible circumstance. And for one person, it's their job.
Yeah.
And
Oof.
I can tell you, if I had to be quarantined for some reason, if my warehouse had to be quarantined, I would not be happy to be with some of my coworkers for an extended period of time.
Yeah, I mean, like working together and living together are completely different
Yep.
things. Same as like when your close friends become your roommates all of a sudden. You're just like, oh, cool. I didn't know this about you. And
Mhm.
turns out we're not very compatible in close quarters. And situation now with coronavirus and the circumstances of both these films really throw these people into these close quarters and these terrible situations for extended periods of time.
Very, very extended. So one of the reasons I picked this film to talk about along with The Thing, as opposed to other films that sort of deal with isolation or claustrophobia, is again the lack of women,
Mm.
with the exception, of course, of the mermaid. That is
Yeah,
definitely not real.
yeah, almost certainly, definitely, yeah. Probably the second most absolute fantastical part of the movie that you can straight up chalk up to a hallucination. Yeah, the only woman in the movie that's definitely just this uh, figment of sexual desire for Robert Pattinson.
Yep. Yep. I remember reading somewhere that and I won't get too graphic with this description because this film, of course, gets very unsuitable for work, we shall say.
Oh yeah.
Um, the first thing that Robert Pattinson filmed was his sexual fantasy.
Oh, fun.
So it's like, oh, that's got to be an interesting thing to. That's got to be an interesting way to start.
To like walk into work.
Yeah, just like
I always find that interesting what scenes directors want to do first. Some will do like a really simple thing first, and others will just like dive head on into like, all right, here's the most challenging thing we're doing. Go.
and that scene in particular, I love that it's not just the absence of a female presence for him. It's literally everything is driving him to this point, this
Mm-hmm.
frustration, and it's the only way to deal with it. And has to go all the way out to the tool shed to do it.
Yeah, it's so much more than just a sexual frustration or a lack of other people. It's also his past. It's also his guilt. It's everything that's driven him to this point in his life. It's all of his regret and all of his shame coming together in one sequence. It's a really good emotional breaking point beyond just being like this scene of the very explicit scene.
Yeah. And just a fun fact, while we're on that explicit scene, I read again on IMDb that to deal with the genitalia, they looked at sharks.
Yeah,
So that's where they got that image.
I read that too. I was like, oh, that's very interesting that they thought they created a situation where they're like, well, we really got to figure out a way for him to with a mermaid. So how's that going to happen?
That's I think it's the first film that the first sort of mermaid where they actually explore that because I we'll talk about this episode of Futurama here really quick because I know you watch Futurama where Fry is falls in love with a mermaid and they're going to have their honeymoon and Fry realizes, oh, how does this work? I'm a human, you're a mermaid.
Yeah, and it instantly causes him to just run away from the fabled lost city of Atlanta.
Yep. And I think they do a similar joke in Family Guy where Lois at one point is saved by a reverse mermaid who has a fish head and the body and the rest of the body is a man. And he has to point out to her, how else would this work?
Oh man.
So yeah, really, it really makes you think about the Little Mermaid and how messed up that could have been.
Yeah, I guess.
I have ruined so many people's favorite Disney film.
The Little Mermaid was genuinely my most watched Disney film as a child. I really love that movie.
Well, if we've accomplished nothing else, congratulations, The Little Mermaid is ruined for all. Uh,
Yeah.
Moving on. Gosh, the last thing I have here about the Lighthouse, and that we've kind of talked about a little bit, it actually kind of goes back to The Shining too, is all work and no play.
Mm.
Because gosh, yeah, even in The Thing, they have the rec room.
Yeah.
They do nothing in the Lighthouse for recreation. They could have brought a frisbee, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
No. You get the sense that Wake probably reads and writes a lot, but
Yeah, in one scene you see him knitting, and apparently
that's right.
knit for the role. But yeah, you don't really see him doing like anything beyond that. But again, he does that, whereas Winslow doesn't. He does nothing. He works, or he just sits around, or he drinks heavily, or he is given to flights of self-abuse in the tool shed.
Yes.
Those are the things that he does.
And of course, Wake says early on in the film, boredom is what will drive you insane.
Mm. No, that's very true. No, I really felt that when they like walk into the house and there's just like some old books on the wall. It's like, oh God, how long before you just read one of those terribly boring books about who even knows what? Like the process of looking up like underwater features before you just go, all right, well, I'm going to read this whole thing cover to cover. Ugh, terrible.
Yep. Well, I mean, it could be worse. Again, they could be stuck with a recordings of the same game show over and over again.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I think that would also drive you equally insane.
All right. So let's just let's start to wrap things up here. Let's just get some closing thoughts on each of these films. So I really don't know what else to say. We've talked a lot about these great films, and if you have not seen them, and our little conversation here has gotten you interested, for the love of God, watch these films. If you are any type of horror fan, watch these films.
Yeah.
The Thing is one of the best horror films to come out of the '80s, and The Lighthouse is very likely going to be looked back as one of the best horror films of this last decade.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, now's the time. October is always the time to just, it's the excuse season for just watching a bunch of horror movies. And these are very fun ones, for sure.
Yep. Oh, also, if you're watching this, yeah, if you get an opportunity to watch The Witch before The Lighthouse, I would recommend that as well. The Witch, they're not in any way connected, but I think it's actually very interesting that you have The Witch, which is set in the woods in New England, with the early European settlers, and then you have The Lighthouse, which jumps from the woods over to the sea, and a man who is trying to escape his job in the woods.
Yeah.
So you're escaping one horror and jumping into another.
Yeah, no, I think they have like semi-similar themes, and like the endings sort of feel a little reminiscent of one another, or rather, The Lighthouse feels a little reminiscent of The Witch, but that doesn't. I don't think that detracts from either film, and I think they're both really enjoyable for very different reasons. I think The Witch is a little like slower. But if you're into like I don't know, I really enjoyed how folk tale-y The Witch was, and
Yep.
how real everything felt. It felt like a very like this world, real world sense of witches. It was very, very good. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad that The Witch worked and was as successful as it was, because I don't think that Robert Eggers would have been given carte blanche to take the risks he took with The Lighthouse.
Oh yeah, no
If that
way.
were his first film. No studio would, no, not even an indie studio would have backed him on saying, let's do this in black and white and in this aspect ratio.
Yeah,
Um,
and the amount of control that they had, the amount of equipment that they had, apparently because of the film that they used and like all of the filters that they threw on the lenses, they had to like blast every scene with like magnitudes more amount of light than you normally would in order to actually get the film to expose the right way. Yeah, he was really able to do so much more because The Witch was such a like quiet, understated,
Yeah.
but really successful film.
I believe the next movie that Robert Eggers is doing is, I believe it's called The Northman, and I think he's doing a sort of Viking tale,
Oh, fun.
sort of ancient Viking myth. But according to IMDb, and this of course could be way off, um, he's currently also in super duper early pre-production on a remake of Nosferatu.
Oh, wow.
And I think that he is definitely. I'm not always a huge fan of remakes. And I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, but Ben, the Thing is a remake," and I say, "No, it's not. It's a different adaptation of a book." Um,
Definitely a reimagining.
it's yeah. Whereas Nosferatu, like if you're remaking Nosferatu, you're remaking a movie.
Yeah.
It's already been done once in the 70s, and I think it does deserve to be done again, by a director who has that sense of what a old 1920s film feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a good one, and I hope that is something that happens.
That'd be fun. That'd be very fun. I now my mind is reeling with his Nordic tale. I'm feeling very 13th Warrior vibes for the.
I do know that. Again, I'm actually going to look it up and make sure I got that title right. The Northman. I do know it's supposed to have Willem Dafoe again. And he's also reuniting with Anya Taylor-Joy, his lead actress from The Witch.
Fun.
So, yep, The Northman.
Nice.
So that should be actually let's check it out here. IMDb says The Northman, a Viking revenge saga set in Iceland at the turn of the 10th century. Okay,
Awesome.
so that. I have no idea what John Carpenter is up to these days. I can't remember what the last film he made was. It's been too
It
long.
wasn't go. He made one after Ghosts of Mars, right?
Ghosts of Mars is the last major one I remember.
Yeah. Which, if you're into bad movies, Ghosts of Mars is a pretty bad one. But I don't know. I had a lot of fun watching it.
Well, I think he's sort of served as like executive producer on the newer at least that last Halloween film.
Oh yeah, no, Halloween was like definitely his most recent, wasn't it?
So I don't think he wrote it, and I know he didn't direct it, but he definitely was like EP or at least some kind of producer on it. And I think he's serving as a producer on the next two. And the last Halloween movie, it wasn't my favorite, but it was definitely a step in the right direction for the franchise.
I'd yet to check it out. I'm pretty new to the Halloween franchise overall. I think I watched the first Halloween movie just last year, and that's the only one I've seen.
First one is still the best.
Well, there we go. No need to watch the others.
All right, so let's move on to the final part of our episode, which is, of course, trivia. So, Frank, you know how this works.
Yeah.
So far, you've been here for one episode, which puts you a little bit behind some people. My friend Sarah is already up to 3. Oh, man. Got a handful of people who have 1. Our dear friend Dea Osborne has been on the show, I think, 4 times now, and is still at 0,
Wow.
which she's been my most frequent guest. She's going to get on the board at some point.
I'm
But
very
here's
sorry today because I know I made one of those questions that she got wrong, and it was a terribly hard question.
I actually remember which episode that question was used for, and she was not on it. So,
Oh, really?
yep.
Oh.
So your question, Frank.
Uh-huh.
At the 45th Saturn Awards, which was the last Saturn Awards, which of the following films won the award for Best Horror Film? Was it A, Hereditary, B, A Quiet Place, C, Us, or D, Halloween?
I hope it was Hereditary.
Do you
So I'm gonna
is
say
that
Hereditary.
you're going to say
Yeah, that'll do.
Hereditary? The answer is A Quiet Place.
Oh no.
Which honestly, that surprises me. When I looked at that, I was like, huh, interesting. I would have thought it would be Hereditary or Us.
That's terribly disappointing to me, but okay.
They were all 4 nominated.
All right.
But
well,
I will actually be perfectly honest with you. I was not a huge fan of Hereditary.
I haven't seen Hereditary, but I did not think A Quiet Place was really as good as I feel like it got hyped for, as a lot of people seem to really glom onto it. But hey, to each their own.
I enjoyed A Quiet Place, but my only qualm with that is it feels less like a horror film and a little more science fiction.
Yeah, I definitely feel that it doesn't. It definitely hits like a more of an action horror vibe. It feels a little more mainstream, which isn't bad, but it also doesn't really hit. I'm not really scared watching A Quiet Place.
No, it's less. For what I didn't like about Hereditary, I will say it is very unsettling at several points. I have not seen Us, and I've already talked about Halloween. Pretty good horror film. So yeah, that is our episode for the week. Again, thank you, Frank. Before I let you go, I should have done this at the beginning of the episode. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your horror film?
Oh yeah, it's not scary at all. It's more of a comedy, honestly. It's called The Third Bedroom. It's a horror comedy short, and it'll be showing at the Tacoma Film Festival, which is all online this year. So you can get tickets for a block of time, and I'm in one of the blocks of the late night short section for the Tacoma Film Festival if you want to watch it virtually. So yeah, if you want to check it out, please do.
That is awesome. Yeah, definitely everyone check that out. And we do not have any qualms against horror comedies here. When we did the favorite Halloween movies 2 weeks ago, Shaun of the Dead came up, Beetlejuice was in there. We of course had to touch on Nightmare Before Christmas because it may not be scary, but it is, I would say, the greatest celebration of Halloween in a film.
Absolutely. No, Nightmare Before Christmas is great. I honestly love kids' Halloween movies as much as horror movies are fun too. I still always love Halloween Town and all the like weird Disney Channel original Halloween based movies. It's all good.
All right, so that just about wraps it up for us. Yeah, Frank, thank you so much for being here and talking about two of I'm going to say 2 of the best horror movies ever made.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. It was a real delight.
So yeah, and thank you everyone for watching. And as always, have a good evening.